Welcome to the Copy Closer podcast. Today we've got Brian Kurtz. If you don't know who Brian Kurtz is, you're probably someone who's just started in the industry. You need to know who Brian Kurtz is. So he actually doesn't know this. It's as I'm introducing him on the fly here, I'm remembering a story when I went to the last system seminar years ago, and he had a book that he was giving away. I think it was this one, because I've got a couple. I have one that I purchased from him and one that he gave away. So I obviously took the free one as well.
Right.
And so, man, Brian, I'm so happy you're on the show, dude. Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you. There's a funny story about that last system seminar. Paris Lampropoulos, the copywriter, was there. And Paris and I, really close friends. And we sort of, I'm not going to say we look alike, but we have a certain look. You know, it's like a Mediterranean, like he's the Greek and I'm the Jew. But, you know, it's kind of similar. And so the day I gave away those breakthrough advertising books, everybody was thanking me, all that stuff. And then the next day I couldn't go to the conference, and Paris was there. So somebody went up to Paris thinking he was me and said to Paris, like, "Hey, Paris," hey, he didn't say Paris, he just said, "Hey, thank you for the book." And Paris, not wanting to give away that, it was not his generosity, he said, "Oh, you're welcome." So, I always give him a hard time for that. But anyway.
Wow, man, that's so funny. It's cool how things come full circle, because I remember getting that book, and I went there with my martial art instructor, Dwight Woods, and he knew, but he's the one who first got me into, copy and marketing, just helping him in his martial arts school. And he was like raving about you. I'm like, well, he's got this really cool free book here. Like, I may as well snag a copy, right?
It's funny, but back then I was still at Boardroom, and we just published like a limited supply. And I wasn't really looking to make money on it. And so we would go to these conferences. Ken McCarthy's doing a conference. We give the book away. And now, and I didn't even know it. And it's not a question of how much money I'm making on it, because it's a great book. But I'm selling the book for $125, and the appetite for Gene's work for a book that was written in 1966, and not one word was changed. It's the ultimate book. I mean, if you're a copywriter and you haven't read Breakthrough Advertising, shame on you. But then again, not shame on you, but that it's really it's an advanced text. I mean, it's an advanced book. And it's not just a book about copywriting. It's a book about human behavior.
Yeah. Well, he was talking about, when I first, so I have to admit, I've never actually read it full through. I've read it in like chunks and kind of and stuff.
I'll tell you, it's not a bad way to read it. The best way to read it is it's so dense that I always recommend the first 3 chapters are so dense that you read the first 3 chapters like 2 or 3 times and then read the rest of the book. And I try to read it at least once a year.
Yeah.
And I pick up something new every time.
Well, if I remember it correctly, I was talking with Pauline Longden. I don't know if you know.
Yeah, I know Pauline.
Yeah, so she's awesome. Her and Ray were just in Miami recently. We hung out, we talked, and I told her the same thing, and she laughed. She's like, you know what? Most people don't even get through the first couple chapters, and they all talk about the first concept of, everybody, how sophisticated is the audience.
Yeah, sophisticated markets, right?
Yeah, and then that's it. That's that's about all their education is. Yeah. But I remember after she said that, I was like, you know what? I can't be one of those people. I have to go jump back in. Yeah. So I started going through it, and I realized he was talking about basically what we call tripwires today. I mean, he was talking about it as well, about how you get them commit. And I'm going to destroy the actual terminology here, but it was the concept of, was it gradualization or something? Right. Was that right? So, yeah. But it was and I'm thinking about this. I'm like, that's what I do when I sell like my little cross necklaces, that I upsell people to buy more of my necklaces and stuff.
Right.
So I'm like, that's so cool, because he cracked the code back then. And I think a lot of people, and again, I'd love to hear your opinion on it, but it sounds like a lot of people think there's all this new things, like all these new whiz-bang, strategies going on, but a lot of it was just, it's been proven back in the day.
Yeah, I have an interesting theory on that. So my new book, Over Deliver, is, the chapter 2 is called The Importance of Original Source. And what I really wanted to get in, and it was a hard chapter to write, because you can't talk about like the originals without sounding like, oh, the old guys knew all the answers and you guys don't know anything. And that's not what my premise is. My premise was that it's all been invented. It's just a question of how you apply it, and the sophistication of marketing today online is just a gradual maturity. But if you understand where it came from, if you understand where that original source was, the way you can apply those concepts in today's environment, it's going to be so much richer, because you're basing it on premises that are the building blocks of direct marketing. But that's not to say that, and I always like to say this, it's not to say that going to original source is not taking a walk down memory lane. It's not like a nostalgia thing, but it's a really good foundation, and then you build on it. And so I have a lot of that in the book about, certain concepts and how they apply today, like how regression modeling in direct mail, how that applies to Facebook, lookalike models now. And, it's funny, I did a podcast some time ago, and I was talking about this concept, and the guy who was interviewing me really wanted me to go deep on regression modeling. And what regression modeling is, a very sophisticated way, and I don't want to go into all the details, but a sophisticated way of modeling a list by mailing it a cross-section, get the responses, and then taking those responses and matching them up against the wider universe based on the characteristics. And so he's going down this deep, dark hole with me, and I didn't realize he wanted to go in such detail, but I did. And then he put the podcast on Facebook, and I remember seeing, and somebody chimed in and goes, "Wow, this is a great interview with Brian Kurtz. He talks about this regression modeling. I thought Facebook invented lookalike models. Mind blown." And so, but what that told me was that, if you could learn a lot of the things like RFM and lifetime value and all the things that are in my book, it's going to give you a better foundation. I go to mastermind. I'm in mastermind groups where, I'm the dumbest guy in the room. I go in, it's the best online marketers in the world. But I know I've got a foundation so that I get the concepts and I can pick up on them a lot faster. And then again, they want to know what the concepts were, and they get a better understanding. So that's my whole take on original source. And I think it's a really, really important thing. And some people don't have the time for it, and some people don't have the patience for it. And you can still do fine by not revering the past. But I encourage people to spend a little time taking a look at what went before them so they can see what's coming up.
Well, 100%. I mean, I came from a martial art background. I used to have a martial arts school in Florida. And I remember, like probably the first 5 or so 7 years of my martial art journey, I just thought this like more or less punching and kicking thing was it. And then I learned that, what came before that was really a lot of this, stick and dagger work and a lot of these other things. So I was like, oh, that stuff is boring. And I was young. I didn't find it fun, but my martial art instructor made me do it. And so when I hear you talking about this, I relate it to martial art. And what I'm talking about is Filipino Kali, and it doesn't really matter, to be honest. But I was learning this other stuff, and I realized, when I'm throwing, hitting across the face with a stick or whatever, it's the same kind of fundamental movements that you would do if you were just doing it empty hand without anything. And so he taught me, Kali is everything, which was the martial art. And then we changed it to everything is everything, right? Because as long as you understand where it came from, you can actually start, we called it reference points. Okay, well, in Kali, when we hit somebody in the head this way, we do this. How can we try to translate that in an empty-handed thing? It's the same thing in direct mail.
That's a great analogy. Yeah. Like the same is true. My daughter's a dancer. And, learning ballet gives you you look at ballet and then you look at, lyrical or modern, dance, and they're really related. And actually, you need to know ballet is like the fundamental. And it's interesting. You can look at that in a lot of different areas. And,
Yeah.
it's a good analogy.
Anything you try to get mastery in, it's that's usually where you start finding it. But let's go back to your story. We actually started talking about all this cool stuff. I'd love to dive into your story about what what did you do before you got into the direct response marketing world? And then how did you even get introduced to it?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's interesting because I graduated college. I was the film critic for my school newspaper, and I thought I wanted to write. So I just, went around. I remember I spent about a month going all around New York City. I looked up all the publishers and all the places where I thought I could get a job, and I just basically pounded the pavement, literally. And so I got a job at a company called Samuel French, which does plays, and they do royalty rights for plays. So I got a job there, and, it wasn't a writing job, but it was, I was in the theater. It was okay. I was like, I was an English major, and I decided not to go to law school, not to go to film school, not to go to umpire school. I was a baseball umpire. So once I decided not to do any of those things, it was like, well, I got to get a job. So you just check it out. And so I'm doing this, and I got an interview while I was there. I mean, I wasn't going to stay there, but I got an interview at this little company boardroom, and it was not for an editorial job, but it was for a list management job. So they had in-house list management. Most companies at that time, and they still do, give their list to an outside list manager. And boardroom decided, because the list was so important, they didn't have advertising. Boardroom was a newsletter. They had the mailing list, and the mailing list was the only way to get to the audience, and they managed the list in-house. So I didn't know what a list was. I didn't know any of that stuff. But not only that, I mean, here I am going to a company with an in-house list management. And so I'm being interviewed for this job. I have no idea what it is. And I'm just thinking I'll get in this company and I'll get an editorial job, because they had a newsletter and they had editors. So, the reason why I'm saying it this way is that, you do stumble in, to things, and you never know. But I stumbled into a job in list management.
So how did you even find out about board? Was it just like an ad in the newspaper?
No, it was and that was another thing. So there was a headhunter who was supplying a lot of people to boardroom, and I had met him during my senior year of college. I went into the city like my January of my senior year of college, because I went to Rutgers in New Jersey. So I just went into the city one day and visited some headhunters, and I said, what am I going to do? I'm going to have an English degree in 5 months, and I don't know what I want to do. And this one headhunter said, oh, I can't place you now because, but I know this company. It's like this is a very interesting growing company. So basically I got friendly with this headhunter. And so 5-6 months later, he kept on saying to me, I want to get you into this company. I want to get you into this company. And then the job opened up, and that happened that way. So again, it was like a series of circumstances that were not, I don't believe in luck. I believe in serendipitous luck. So I believe that you put yourself in positions to take advantage of everything around you. So, I mean, I thought every step was random and planned at the same time. And so that then a job opened up at Blue Boardroom. This guy got me the interview, and the rest is sort of history. Going back again, I got to the job at Boardroom. I'm in list management. I'm there for about 1.5 years, and a job opened up in the editorial side. So I went into Marty Edelston, who was the founder, and I said, Marty, I really want to go to the editorial side. And this was probably a big moment of truth. But at 23 years old, the president of the company looks at you and he says, Brian, I think you have a nose for marketing. And that was sort of a turning point because I still was on the, had the notion that I was going to be an editor. I was going to be a writer. And he basically said, and so when you're 23 years old, I mean, what the hell do I know? So I said, all right, if you say so. And I was having a lot of success already selling lists and doing that type of thing. So, it definitely, there was no turning back after that. And then it was 10 years of list management and then marketing and then, doing everything.
So you were doing list management and then you did that for a year?
Well, I did it for a year when the job opened up in the editorial department.
And then you continued to do it with your other job.
Yeah, and then I didn't take the editorial job, so I stayed in list management for another 10 years.
Oh, you did? Okay, so you didn't take the editorial job. You stayed in list management. And, dude, so list management, what did you do? I mean, I have an idea of what you did, but I don't know.
Right. So in the direct mail world, there are list managers and list brokers. So a list manager are the people that represent the lists in the marketplace. The brokers represent the mailers. So if you're a supplement mailer, you go to a broker and say, go find me lists. He goes out and searches all the lists, and the list managers then pitch those lists to him or her to the list broker, and the list broker then recommends those to the mailer. So it's a very interesting dance that the list business is. And so I was basically selling lists. I mean, and now again, in direct mail, it's rentals. It's not, you don't buy lists because it's for one-time rental. So I'm basically selling the lists for rental to all kinds of mailers. The beauty of the boardroom lists were that they were so responsive because they were sold with copy that was written by great copywriters, fascination oriented, all kinds of, it wasn't like sweepstakes. It wasn't like, it was all narrative in the way the copy was done. So everybody used our list, like from magazines to other newsletters to charitable fundraisers to political mailers. It's like these are affluent executives, and plus our newsletters were for affluent executives. So it was a very, very special list. So having that clientele of mailers kind of exposed me to the entire industry, and that got me really hungry to learn the whole marketing side. So I think coming from the list area, though, by understanding audiences really is the key to probably, how my career started and how when I look at my book and I look at talking about lists and offers and copy, coming out of the audience, because I think if you look at every great copywriter, in my first book, when we, covered the, Gene Schwartz and Gary Halbert and David Ogilvy, every great copywriter, when they talk about what's important, it's always about the list. It's always about the audience. And it's weird because, Gary Halbert, you think, oh, one of the greatest copywriters ever. And yet he's saying it's not my copy. It's like, you give me a list and I'll write the copy for them. But if I write the greatest copy in the world and I don't have the right audience, I've got no chance. So I think coming out of the list business was all by chance, but it was, I think, a great way to formulate my career, because then I was able to come back the other way with copy and offers to really know that the list was the most important thing.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds like you actually have a more well-rounded education, because I'm assuming you also got to see the stats, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I saw all the numbers.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know how things were then, but one of the hardest things for freelancers, at least, is getting stats back, right? So, as a person who's going in, if you're in the list world, man, it just sounds like you have a real education and direct response, because you know what a good offer is, what built the list, what's currently converting, what's not converting. I mean, you could probably write some killer copy just on your own because of that experience.
I could. I mean, I always thought that, copywriting was sort of this this magical thing, and I always called myself a copywriter wannabe. But I think, because I don't think I could really sit down and write a package or a sales letter, soup to nuts. But I really do have a great understanding of copy platforms, how copy will, if I know the profile of the list, I can think about different copy platforms that would work. And the interesting thing that you hinted at is that copywriters, when you say, freelancers and copywriters don't get the data, don't get the numbers, the best copywriters do, because they demand it. And, I don't think, one of the things that I noticed over my career after working with some of the greatest copywriters is that any copywriter that didn't ask me for a list history, or of all the lists that were mailed, all the lists that did work, that didn't work, they weren't really worth very much, because they weren't. That would be the first thing that I would do if I was a copywriter. So I'm not a copywriter, but I understood that if I was one, like if I had the talent of Paris Lampropoulos or David Deutsch or Gary Bensavenga, I would do what they did, which was learn everything I could about the audience, about the, we talk now about the avatar, but it's so much more than that. It's like you can, and I think not looking at who the mailer or the marketer is promoting to and not promoting to is probably the most important thing you should know as a copywriter.
Oh, that's so true. I mean, because if you don't know your results, it's impossible to even get better. It's
and not just the results, but also the different audiences that you're going after.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely.
Well, do you think that because of the internet, copywriters and marketers have kind of just become a little bit lazier in their marketing, just because you can get results with some kind of bullshit?
Yeah, I always say, yeah, there is. I mean, I think the best copywriters will never be lazy, because they're not gonna let themselves become lazy. But you can get away with being lazier, because, I mean, look at it this way. In my book, I talk about the 40-40-20 rule, which is in direct marketing, the 40-40-20 rule says the success of a campaign depends 40% on the list, 40% on the offer, and 20% on the creative. Now, that doesn't mean that the creative is half as important, but it does mean what you were saying, which is if you've got a perfect list and a perfect offer and half-ass copy, you're going to make some money, right? If you have world-class copy, wrong list, and wrong offer, you get zero. So that's where, your point about becoming lazy, maybe not lazy, but maybe not as thorough, that's a euphemism for lazy, but not being as thorough with your copy, you can get away with that. But think of it this way. If you've got list and offer dialed in, and then you start really digging in on the copy, that's where you get breakthrough offers. That's where you get, the breakthrough kinds of programs and experiences that are going to blow people away. So in my book, I talk about the 40-40-20, but then I made it the 41-39-20, because I thought that list was 41%. Because I do, and again, without getting, this isn't like an exact science, but I think getting the list, knowing the list and getting it dialed in first gives you the ability to start working the offers, and then you work the copy. And
I could see that 100%. I've actually seen that with affiliate offers where the actual sales page is really not that good. And in the email, one of the things we had to do as an affiliate is say, hey, listen, when you click over, the sales page looks really ugly and it's terribly written. So I'm just going to give you all the information in this email. So it's a little longer, but just keep reading or whatever. And so we had to kind of pre-frame them a little, but that other sales page got tons of orders just because of the trust of the gurus.
Right.
So the list,
right.
essentially, right?
Right, and that really is the list, and then it's the relationship between lists and copy. So that you know the list. If you can get the copy to be have a relationship that's deeper than, you know, kind of a, it's like the one thing I would say in online marketing is that it's so much cheaper to market, which definitely makes it one size fits all becomes a lot easier. But it's like such a mistake, because if you can segment and you can afford to have many more segments in direct mail, it was expensive. I mean, you're paying extra postage by making different splits. And in online marketing, it doesn't cost you anything more to have different segments. And then each of the segments gets its own copy. And even if the copy, the base copy of your email is kind of templated, but the lead is to the audience, that, you know, they call it the buffers. I mean, to me, anybody who's doing one size fits all email is crazy. I mean, it's like so much opportunity for segmentation and personalization.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, with the technology, you can always get lazier, but you can also get way more precise. The folks who are serious about their business, you can start segmenting things far easier now and just tag stuff. Okay, when somebody opens this email, they go into this list. You don't even have to think about it, you know? So when I'd love to hear, like, what would you say that, like, or I guess if you were a copywriter, what would be some things that you would ask for? What did copywriters ask for when you were in the list management business that you were like, hey, you know, this is what you got to know, man?
Well, certainly list history. I mean, you want to know the audience, you want to know everything they mailed, everything that they, every audience, good or bad. I'd want to know all of that. I'd want to see not just you always want to see the control that you're trying to beat, but I'd want to see every package that was mailed or you know, promoted for the product, because you want to see every possible creative and the results so that you can see what worked, what didn't. I mean, that's absolute. We used to have a thing called a project start memo for a copywriter, and it was like a kit. Like to get them started, we give them the list history. We give them all the packages that have been mailed. I'd want to see the competitive environment. So I'd want to see what competitors were doing in the same marketplace and seeing what kind of success they had. I'd want to see what competitors have mailed my client's list, so I could take a look at what's out there that's worked, what kind of copy approaches have worked. So, I mean, there's a ton of stuff that, and this can get a bit overbearing, because, you know, you don't want to get paralysis by analysis, but you definitely want as much information before you write one stitch of copy. The other thing that is a subtlety that I always encouraged copywriters, I didn't have to encourage them except if they were new, but I said, if they were writing for a book, for example, so I give them the book, you're going to write a package for this book. I'd say, what's not in the book that you wish was in the book? And I call this, you know, so the idea, so Gene Schwartz, for example, when he was given a book, his first question was, what's not in the book? And then he would start asking about, like, if he saw something on diabetes, but not on, you know, some other kinds of blood sugar things, he'd go, how come there's nothing about this? And then we'd send the editors to go find something about that. And we actually start creating more content that he could write about. Because the copywriters should know, if they're going deep in a particular topic, they should know what the hot areas are. And if those hot areas are not all covered in the subject matter of the book, or whatever the product is, if I'm talking about an info product here, but even if it's, you know, what's not covered, you know, even if it's a supplement, what's not talked about this supplement, that it might do something else that, you know, it's not as obvious. So it's basically a constant inquiry into what's not here. I can see what's here, but what's not here. And that's a very subtle thing, and something that a lot of copywriters don't dig in enough. And the beauty of that is that once you start digging in like that, that's where you're going to find your differentiators. That's where you're going to find the things that make a commodity a specialty. And while you look at, so let's take a look at fish oil. So fish oil, you know, it's basically what's different from this fish oil versus that fish oil. And if you can find something, that's going to be the killer thing, whether it's in a particular, you know, even if you have to sort of make it up without lying, you know, that this fish oil is so pure, it came from the streams, or it came from a cave somewhere in Africa, you know, even if it's not any more potent, the characteristics become its differentiator. And the more commoditized the product, the more you have to do this, because to create specialty. So
that story is where it's really going to be the big differentiator, it sounds like.
Right. 100%. And to get to that story, so the question was, what would a copywriter need? And so the copywriter has to really dig in and ask the really deep questions as to what makes this product different. And it's not obvious sometimes.
Right. Have you ever been a fan, because it almost sounds like you are, so I'd love to get your input. Have you been a fan of like write the copy first, then create the product? Or have you ever done that type of process?
I'll tell you, when I was working at Boardroom, we had created the products, but what happened was a lot of times we did these questionnaire tests where we would take like 6 titles and write little blurbs to find out if our audience what would be the ones they would be most likely to buy. And in those cases, some of the blurbs were books that the copywriter made up, so that it was a product that didn't exist yet, but it was the product that the copywriter wanted to write about. And we said if it scored high, then we would create the book. So I am a fan of that. And now, sometimes you have a product and it's been out there for a while, and you just want a new package, and therefore you just need new copy for that package. But I would say that a good copywriter can create the product from their imagination, from their mind, and if it sounds good and it scores well in a questionnaire, then go produce the product. And that is a very, very good way, and that's really, it's similar to, and I could see why you picked up on that, because it's the same thing of what's not in the book. So basically what the copywriter is saying is, hey, this book is okay, but, and I'm using book as a figurative. It could be any,
of course.
Could be a
supplement with like a report attached to it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that if they could come up with new angles on that book, look, it could be premiums and bonuses and stuff that don't even have to go in the book. So you can still have the same book and you create bonuses and then you create a bigger offer. But it's the stuff that is the most exciting that might not be there already, but that the copywriter is the one that's going to invent it.
Yeah. Dude, I love this. You know, I'd love to hear a little bit more also about, because I love how we're getting into all this, like I almost consider this tactical stuff, because although we're talking about things that you guys may have done in the past, this is still completely relevant today, right? I mean, this is exactly what we're paying attention to today. Our audiences are on Facebook, and are on our email list and stuff like that. What was it like working at Boardroom? When I say that, I mean like, you know, here, it's a weird question because it's not like a pre-planned thing. Like I remember going into some of my clients' offices and they'll have weird kind of routines. Like when a sale would happen, they'd have a big gong they would hit, right? Almost like a car dealership, like little things like that. Did you guys have stuff, maybe not like that, but some kind of weird things? Maybe every time you walk in the boardroom, you do something. Okay, I'll let you speak. I'm going to shut up for a second.
No, it's an interesting question. I mean, you know, we're selling $39 product in books and newsletters, so that would be a lot of gongs, right? For million subscribers, it's like, yeah. But I think that there were a lot of things at Boardroom that were really interesting. We had a program called iPower, which was a continuous improvement program that everybody in the company was required to come to every meeting with 2 ideas. And it could be anything. I mean, if it was a creative meeting, you want to come with 2 creative ideas at least. But if it could be just a group meeting and you start the meeting by going around the room, and the 2 ideas could be, well, I think we should, the toilet paper should the roll should unravel from the bottom as opposed from the top. And just to get the juices flowing, and to but that would lead to bigger ideas all the time. So it was actually Marty Edelston, our president and founder, went to Peter Drucker, and they had a meeting, and he said, Peter Drucker said, "How are your meetings?" And Marty said, "They're terrible." And he said, just ask 2 people for 2 ideas. And that developed this program. So that was one thing. And I think just in general, it was a quirky office. Marty had a lot of modern art and a lot of kinetic art, like stuff that moved, and it was some weird shit.
That's cool.
So it was like a really cool place. It was like no other. And so it was pretty special, but no gongs and none of that. But it was a pretty special place.
Well, it's cool because what it does, and that's why I liked asking the question, is because it seems like you guys had a lot of like intrapreneurial, things going on there. Instead of I love that he made everybody. Was it everybody who would come into a meeting had to have 2 ideas?
Yeah, and sometimes they would just have an iPower meeting, which means that a group would get together and they go around the room and just do 2 ideas, and that was the meeting. So,
and iPower, did you guys develop this?
Yeah, Marty developed it. He based it on the Japanese concept of Kaizen and continuous improvement. There was a little book he wrote on it. It was pretty cool.
It'd be cool to relaunch, man. It's got a cool name.
I guess I could. I mean, I'd rather have someone else do it.
Right. No, I get it. But that's cool. So would you guys say that you had that kind of atmosphere, a very entrepreneurial atmosphere?
Yeah, I mean, Marty in his early days kind of ran the company, kind of, not with a fit, not pounding on the table, but the company was like a rake, it was like Marty and then everybody else.
I see.
But over time, as Marty got older, and after I came out of list management, it became a little bit more, for me, it was very entrepreneurial. I always say when people ask me about their entrepreneurial journey, I say, well, if you want me to help you with your startup or with bootstrapping, it's really not my thing. Although since I left Boardroom, I have my own. I went entrepreneurial, but I think the entrepreneurial training that I got at Boardroom prepared me for becoming an entrepreneur. But there was a lot of later on in the later years. There was a lot of skunk works kind of things, and we had a lot of projects that were done by smaller groups, and so there was a lot of that. But in the early days, no, and even though it was very much Marty's vision, he was training the people to have an entrepreneurial spirit.
So when you were there for 10 years doing list management, did you transition to something else within the company?
Yeah. So, I mean, I became the executive vice president of marketing. So I became, the head of all of marketing. So I was there for 34 years. So the first 10 were learning lists and learning the whole business. And then the rest of that time, I was really the marketing director, and then the marketing head. So it was a gradual transition, but a really solid one, because I was on good footing, by the foundations that I had.
Yeah, well, I mean, you dedicate 10 years of your life, and you obviously did a lot of really great stuff. I mean, the list management, I mean, shit, if you the lists are wrong, you can't make money. So that's kind of like
right.
Sounds like, right? So since then, what did you do? You said you started dabbling into the entrepreneurship stuff. You went from boardroom and went into something else?
Well, yeah. So I was at boardroom for 34 years.
Long time.
And I
kicked ass over there.
Yeah. And then right before I left, I did an event called the Titans of Direct Response, which was kind of a pretty epic event. It was.
I've regretted missing it for like the last decade or whatever it's been.
Yeah, 2014.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So after that, I realized that and Marty and I had always used to talk. Marty had died in 2013, and I made it a tribute event to him. And he and I always used to talk about the idea that, those who did it have a responsibility to teach it. And at a certain point, I mean, I was, my late 50s. I felt like I had done all I needed to do at boardroom. And I thought that I went from in a B2C business, I went into a B2B business, and I launched Titans Marketing because I really felt like I wanted to teach everything that I had learned. And so I quickly started a mastermind group, and I've since started a second mastermind group, and I'm going to start a third one. And the third one, it's going to be broader because it's not going to have any live events. It's going to be more virtual. And I think the idea of reaching as many people as possible with my teaching, which is it's not like I invented anything. It's like I have just a unique take on direct marketing. And that's why I wrote Over Deliver, because it was a book that was, I mean, it's really my opus. And so now I've got enough, foundation with my books and the mastermind groups where I can reach a lot more people for those that want to be reached. And I'm not looking to save the world, and I'm not looking to have, tens of thousands of followers. I'm really looking for a quality group that really wants to know that there's a bridge that connects the fundamentals of direct marketing to everything that's state of the art today. Also in that, so I have that business, but then I'm also a member of other mastermind groups where I get to learn. So I'm basically a lifelong student. So I'm a member of, Jeff Walker's mastermind group. I'm a member of Joe Polish's mastermind group. I'm in a bunch of other smaller mastermind groups, because I want to go to places where I can learn what I don't know and then apply it back to what I do know. And then I also bring it back to my mastermind groups, because my mastermind groups are based on the fact that the world is multi-channel. It's not just Facebook, and it's not just direct mail, and it's not just TV, and it's not just search. It's everything. And so everything I do is multi-channel. I own a URL called singlechannelmarketingissoboring.com. If you go to www.singlechannelmarketingissoboring.com, you land on my website. You can also land on my website at briankurtz.net, but it's the same thing.
That's funny.
And it's not just boring, it's dangerous, if you're into single channel marketing. So nobody in my group is interested in that in my group. So that's sort of the premise that I started the groups on. And it's, it's expanded, and they've been pretty exciting. So that's the entrepreneurial piece of my business, but I'm still learning. And again, I always say, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. So in my mastermind group, I'm not the smartest person in the room. There are a lot of people there that know a lot more than me about a lot of things. And then when I go to my other mastermind groups, I'm probably the least smartest person in the group, because I don't know some of the stuff that they're doing. So it's, and you got to keep learning all the time.
Well, what's cool about this is that you've actually, I mean, you've got your own 30-something years of experience of actually being in the trenches, seeing results, seeing what works, and principles don't change. I mean, maybe they'll evolve a little bit here and there, but I mean, the principle of what made somebody buy back in the day, quote unquote, back in the day is still going to make somebody buy today, right? It just might be slightly different language, but one of the things that you're saying is super resonating for me because I just experienced it recently, and I made this humongous mistake, which I'm sure a lot of people have made, where they put all their eggs in one basket and said, you know what, I'm going all in on Facebook ads. And you crush it with Facebook ads, and then you get banned. And then, I'm on this blacklist with Facebook. I've got like 1 billion accounts I got to roll through. It's ridiculous. And
it's one of the biggest messes that, and the thing is, it's not that people because I grew up in direct mail, so a lot of people pigeonhole me as the direct mail guy, and I always say direct mail is it's not an or, it's an and, but it may not be your and. Your and may be TV or radio or print or other online media, but you've got to have some choices because you got to be diversified. And I don't think you ever want, any one medium taking up more than half your budget. And if you could do it more, I mean, I'd like to see, Perry Marshall has this great grid that he puts together, and he calls it Maze 2.0, M-A-Z-E 2.0. And what it is, it's like the idea, there's like, he has a grid where it's like live versus recorded and web versus print. And then each of those quadrants, there's different media. And there's like hundreds of different media. And he says, all you got to do is be in one or two of these in each quadrant, and it'll feel like you're everywhere. Because you don't have to be in every, I always say I never met a medium I didn't like, but that's dangerous because then you get, you go out and you're too thin, and you can't focus in on the key media that are going to make you money, but you got to be in a couple of different things in all these different quadrants. But again, you still put all the principles on all of that. Yeah. Like RFM, for example, which is a chapter in my book, is, still, it's not even just a direct marketing rule of thumb. It's human behavior. Recency, frequency, monetary is how people behave. And they behave like that in the 50s and 60s, and they behave like that today. And that hasn't changed.
I don't think that's going to change.
It's never going to change.
So what are some things that you see marketers doing now that you're like, man, you guys got to start paying attention to, this more? Is there anything you see that's obvious?
I want to be real careful because I don't want to be the I told you, and, when I was youngster, I don't want to play that game because, it's first of all, it's not a role that I want to play. But having said that, I do think that, not diversifying your marketing channels, to have a business that is event driven, like, for example, a business that does 2 launches a year, but that's also about diversification. So to not have launches and then another thing on top of it, a membership program or some kind of continuity, is a big mistake. So that's one of the big mistakes I see. Another big mistake is one size fits all messaging, which I mentioned before, because the idea is to really pinpoint your messaging to the list, and that's something that everybody can do. But I say those 2 things, and most of the great marketers I see online today are doing all that. I mean, they're diversifying and they're messaging and they're doing all that. And I also think, creating continuity in your business, creating something that's repeatable, something that's, there's a rule of thumb in direct marketing that says, no direct marketing business can survive without repeat business. I mean, it's kind of like duh, right? But some people aren't paying attention to that. And I'm trying to give you some examples that would be at the base level, because they're getting into business. They have to make money. It's cash flow. So I understand it. But as soon as they get some footing, they really have to be focused in on a lot of these concepts so that they can get ahead, and not stay too long in single channel, single messaging, and narrow-minded kind of marketing. So, I mean, those are some easy ones, but there's a lot.
Those are real good points, because if you look at a lot of e-commerce people, they'll and there's not. I mean, I sell e-commerce stuff as well, but a lot of my counterparts will be doing great on the front end. They'll do great on a second upsell or third upsell, but then that's about it. They have no continuity. It's just kind of like quick hits. Let's just rape and pillage as much as we can, because that's about it. They don't try to build the continuity, the repeat business, or any of that. So I think, part of the stuff that there's a lot of the stuff I love about you, man. You're like an awesome personality. You deliver tons of wisdom. But what I see is it's a lot of this stuff is just common knowledge to you because you've done it for like the last 30 or 40 years. But a lot of this stuff, online, you have the ability to make a lot of money, which is a blessing, but it also means that you can also improve because you've done some stuff. It's like you're in this box, you made a ton of money, and now let's like start applying some of these other principles that may be basic for some other folks who've been in business for a while. But, just because you make $1 million in e-com doesn't mean you're a pure expert yet. We can still get better. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I know I can get better. I mean, I'm always trying to improve. So yeah, that's a good point.
Well, you join a lot of masterminds, which is to your credit as well. You don't just, teach this stuff. You've actually stayed in the trenches and you're surrounded by real leaders and thought leaders.
Yeah, I spend well over $100,000 a year on mastermind groups and travel to events and just to educate myself.
Yeah, I don't doubt it, man. So where can people find out more about you?
Well, I think the best thing, because the book just came out, I think this book is Over Deliver. It came out a short time ago. And what I did was, and people will love, if they go to overdeliverbook.com, they'll love it because I'm over delivering on that. And on that page, it'll say, 3 steps. Step 1, buy the book. So there's a button for Amazon and a button for Barnes and Noble, and you press the button, you go to Amazon, you buy the book, you come back to the site, and then you put your order number in, and you get these 11 bonuses that are outrageous. I mean, there's a course from Jay Abraham. There's and 21 keynotes that he gave. There's Gary Bencivenga. His Bencivenga bullets, I put them into a PDF. There's a Dan Kennedy PDF. There's 2 books on direct mail, full PDFs, Dick Benson and Gordon Grossman, who most guys haven't heard of. There's a Perry Marshall video of a full day event I did with him. It's pretty outrageous. And I tell you, for a $17 book, they get all this stuff.
Dude, it's a no-brainer. I mean, I bought the book on its own, and I didn't even know about the site before. Now that
I got to get you the bonuses.
Yeah, now I want the freaking bonuses because
I'll get you the bonuses.
Yeah, the book in itself is worth every penny plus more. But now that he's literally over-delivered on the bonuses, make sure you guys go to overdeliverbook.com, check it out, get the book, and get all the freaking badass bonuses. Brian, dude, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure.
Been a pleasure.
Take care.